Hello. Okay. Sorry. It's been a long time. It's been a very long time. I've only streamed once since I moved, and this is the second time, and we're here, and it's fine. And I guess take a shot every time I say and. We're coming back on a Fuck Friday because Fuck Fridays are my favorite thing that I used to do. I'm gonna start doing some more. Sorry, get situated with my little legs crossed and whatnot. I'm going to start doing some more consistent streaming because currently I'm waiting for the world to calm down and join me in being slightly less shit. Not going to happen, but a girl can dream. So we're going to go back to streaming kind of consistently. Since I moved to a completely different country, and I kind of did so by the seat of my pants, I don't really have. Sorry, I'm peaking that mic hella bad. Let me turn it down. But since I did that the way that I did, I don't really have all of my stuff, or any of it for that matter. I have a laptop, and my headset. That's pretty much it. So we're going back to our roots here, with a webcam, a shitty one, and frankly, I'm using the mic on these headphones right now. But it's fine. We're gonna learn together. We're gonna adjust together, and we're gonna play some observation duty number 8, the lovely number 8 that I was gifted recently. Just go ahead and pause the background music for my sanity because honestly, I'm so not used to like other sounds while I'm doing things that I can't actually function. It's kind of embarrassing. Pardon me while I get some things situated. Um, I also don't have, so technically I have 2 monitors now, but it's one monitor is um, my drawing tablet that I use for work, and the other one is um, my PC, or my laptop. So it's very, we're doing our best here. But hopefully, I'll stop peeking my mic so that I stop killing people's ears, and I chill out. Um, as far as today, I just had like the most ridiculous. I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna make a cheesecake," and then I got cheese in my hair, and so then I had to shower, and then I was like, "Oh, the next time I showered, I wanted to clean the shower," so then I started cleaning the shower, and then and then my computer needed a BIOS update, and then it was just like one thing after another. But I actually do really want to stream today, so we're just gonna do that and call it good. Um, Gosh, it's simultaneously like riding a bike and also um, speaking a language that I haven't spoken in a really long time. So it's going to take me a little bit to get into this, but I'm going to go ahead and change our game. I'm going to start the game and we're going to play and have some fun. Let's see. Is it going to behave? I do remember this. Yes! Good job, good job. Okay. Uh, turn that down a smidge. So they've made some changes. I'm excited for the changes. We're gonna do our best. But all right. So I know that there are context and global reports now. It's the same as the last one, but they have made some changes. There's the ranch, the airplane, fashion venue, office, research station, and lighthouse. I'm kind of most excited about the lighthouse, but I feel like it's definitely going to be difficult. But at the same token, I'm here for it, so maybe we just do that. How are our settings here? Because, yeah, cool. This has less of a chance of being a problem. I'm gonna turn the brightness up because I know it's hard to see in these games on stream. Like it streams weird. Okay. It's hard for viewers to see, I should say. Are there any, like, accessibility things? Film grain. Yeah, sure, whatever. Display. Do they have vibration intensity? Sure. Okay, I don't see anything, like, super helpful for... So we'll just get into it. Alright. Hold on real quick. Just gotta center that for myself. Okay. Anomalies have been previously cited in the monitored area. Oh, fuck me. Hold on. Oh, it's not playing nice. Hold on. We're gonna put it back into full screen, or borderless full screen. It's not playing nice at all. There we go. Okay. Pay extremely close attention to the surveillance camera footage. File an anomaly report ASAP when you notice something has changed. Same old, same old. Nice. Okay. Perfect. We're at the pier. We're at the yard. Fuck. Keeper's cabin. Interior. Stairwell. Lantern room. Basement. Gross. Back at the pier. Okay. That's creepy. Why is that there? Oh, I thought that was a cross, like the ones that they put in cemeteries that are like hella elaborate. Sorry, I just need to get that off my PC monitor. But no, it's a buoy, a life preserver. Oh, I'm so nervous. It's kind of ridiculous. Also, I didn't really look at these rooms very closely because I'm a fool and a glutton for punishment. So we're going to be playing this a few times until that wasn't there, was it? Extra object. I don't remember seeing like bright purple. Oh, okay. Well, we're playing on normal mode, so it's okay. It's gonna be, fine. I can make false reports. So, okay, the global reports, and then okay, cool, got it. Okay. I will say I kind of have like weird fantasies of living in unusual locations like this. Like I would love to live in like a lighthouse or a decommissioned firehouse or something like that. It's just one of those ones that but at the same token, it's like, do you really? Do you really need to? I feel like we should have one by now, and the fact that we don't is stressing me out. So I'm definitely missing something. But I'm not seeing anything like glaringly obvious. Nothing that's close to the camera has moved around. It's gonna, oh man, I used to have a really good technique of like a scan technique that worked really, really well, but I haven't done this in so long that I don't really know if I could. Was this noise hanging here? That's really weird. What is that? I do remember I've learned my lesson that I don't skip ahead. Like it once I've reported an anomaly, I don't move to the next screen until it tells me whether it was an anomaly or not. Because let's say like there was an intruder and I went to the next screen, I can't report it because you can't report two things at once. So you can end up getting killed in the game without without even having a chance to stop it. Ooh, dentures. Was this always open? What does that count as? Object movement? I guess. Not like an open door. I'm also going to go ahead and just take a sip anytime we jump scare. So that realistically I'll get just more hammered as we do this, and then get more scared more easily. Hello? That's way further back than it used to be. room manipulation, which I do have. I have two drinks, one for the alcohol and one for the making sure I don't dehydrate because I'm a responsible bitch. I am of the age that I need to be responsible. Oh my goodness. Okay. There's just, I'm not really seeing. I mean, I noticed that it moved, but that was about it. Were these always curved? Yeah. They were. They were. They totally were. Oh, I should have gotten a snack. I'm kind of hungry. I didn't. I was really distracted when I was getting ready for everything, and so, that's why we. Wait a minute. How many rooms are there? Pier, yard, keeper's cabin, interior, stairwell, lantern room. Are we missing a room? Basement. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. No, we're not missing a room, right? Oh, fuck. Focus. Focus. Okay. It bonged at me and I was like, I need to focus. And it's like, madam, that's not that's not what that's for. That's not what that's for at all. Sorry, just need to fix something in OBS because, like I said, it's the second time I've streamed since I moved, which I finished my master's degree, thank you very much, with distinction. But okay, I'm technically, as far as my math tells me, oh, is that Abyss? Where are we? Keeper's Cabin? Um, my math tells me that I've finished with distinction. They haven't officially told me that I finished. What? Well, then what's this? Extra object? I don't know. It looks nasty. No, you're lying to me. Oh shit, that was the wrong location. Please God, just let me. Man, you can take the girl out of the Catholic school, but you can't take the Catholic school out of the girl. Uh, okay, then what the fuck is that? Whatever. Not abyss, it's not fog, it's not anything interesting. I call bullshit, but whatever. God, I love this game. I love these games in general. They're so fucking fun. Oh. But yeah, so I finished my master's. Sorry, I was in the middle of a sentence and then died, which apparently is how it is to live in my brain now. Uh, but fuck. Okay, too many anomalies, too many anomalies. I haven't noticed anything. Can you go away though? Because you're really ugly. We're gonna lose. We're gonna lose, and it's gonna be the worst sound in the world, and I'm gonna lose my mind. Um, uh, ooh. It's okay. It's okay. I knew I was gonna have to do this multiple times. It would have been really cool if I did it in one, but you and I both know I suck at this. Um, did these move? I feel like no, I'm wishful thinking. Oof. Okay. Okay. Come on. I see. I don't even know. Is something missing? Something's definitely missing, but I don't know what or where. And it can be a little oh, ha, ha, ha. Image anomaly. Or is that a light anomaly? I feel like it's an image anomaly because it's, the image on a cam or a TV, but hmm. Hmm. Ooh, I might have to get a snack after this round. My chunky monkey booty is hungry. Well, to be fair to myself, I've only eaten breakfast today because I kept forgetting that life exists. So yes, I will eat, but I'm having a really heavy dinner tonight, so it's probably good that I don't overindulge before that. Granted, who cares? Life is short. Eat what you want. Hi. That's weird. What? What do you mean? What do you mean? Is that a replacement? Did it used to be something else? Okay. What was it? Was it just a normal rope? It was just a normal rope. I feel like, oh, I picked extra object. I hope, like, if you, oh, was this was never full. Mm, object replacement? I don't think it was full. Or if it was, I don't think it was full of that. What about object movement? I also kind of feel like when we started, there was something on this, but I've just kind of ignored it. Bitchin'. Wrong about hello. Handprint. Sure. Oh my god. Sorry. I am. Oh. Ooh, God. I am. Because life is what it is and a girl has to pay bills. I work as a housekeeper right now, and it's like really physically demanding. And so my body is. She's pissed, right? Like, she's just like, girl, was this always the world? I don't think this was the world. She's like, girl, have you heard of A, stretching before your shift? And B, object replacement, maybe? I don't think it was always a map, was it? Oh, fuck. Okay. Let me just not be stupid. This is, you know, slightly embarrassing to just. Is that a body? That's a body. Um, and so I'm like somewhat non-functional when I'm not on shift. Oh, water anomaly? Okay, I was gonna say extra object. Water's extra, right? I wonder if you don't get that fast enough, if it like floods the rest of the lighthouse or what? Not seeing anything. I'm waiting for the intruder. Because those always get me something fierce. Okay. Wait a minute. Pier, yard, keeper's cabin, interior, stairwell, lantern room, basement. Are we missing one? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, 7. I feel like, were there 8? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. No. Okay, cool. That's nice, I guess. Did this move? I know it's been there for a while, but it feels like. Is this. I don't remember this being here. Maybe it moved, though. Maybe it was over here. Okay. That's different. Replacement. Woo! Finally got something that I've been eyeballing. Okay. Okay. Was this always here? Yeah. Yeah, there was always a bucket there. It's gonna be really embarrassing if there wasn't. I'm just like, yeah, totally. It was always there. And it's like, girly pop, was it? Okay. We've only made it to 2:30. Girl, oh my gosh. I'm stressing. I'm stressing because I know for a fact that I was behind. And now it's like, you know, that was a great sentence. Wow, that added so much to the experience. Um, Um, oh, thanks. Yeah, that is anxiety. I love anxiety. May as well just. Okay, I'll count. Ew, the gnar. We met the gnar. I'll count that as a jump scare though. One sip for ya. This has changed. There's like, there's an outside missing, isn't there? What? Okay, fuck me, I guess. Huh. Gnar. I don't. Ew! Creepy man watching me. Is it? Oh, I thought it was gonna be one of those ones where you have to get it from outside. Because there was one game, I think it was the second one, so it was quite a while ago. Hello. Extra object, um, where there was like a person looking in and you had to go outside to get it. Oh, please. Movement. What does this count as? Oh, come on. It definitely did not go all the way to the top. What? Um, do my eyes deceive me? Does my memory not work? Because I could have sworn this did not go all the way to the top. I'm, af I'm afraid of seeing the Noir again. Um, that's definitely an extra object. Although, full disclosure, I gotta stop saying its name, whatever it is, because I can't. That's one of those words I can't say very well. And no amount of saying it is gonna make it better. There's certain words that I cannot say. That's one of them. Horror is another. Like I have to try really hard to get the second in it. Otherwise, it just sounds like I'm saying something else. Pier, yard, keeper's cabin, interior, stairwell, lantern room, basement. Okay. They're all here. The gang's all here. I feel like there's something that's moved here, but I have no idea what. Unless, is this an extra object? I know it's been there for a while, but I don't remember if it was there at the beginning. I feel like it has been, and I'm fishing, you know? Which is so apt since we're in a lighthouse uh level. If I remember correctly, there's still like a story going on in these games. We might have to play them all in order at some point just to kind of. Hello, that's gross. Uh, extra object? I don't know. Blood on the wall seems extra. Oh, I'm chilly. Okay, I guess not. Hi. Oh, I found a secret. I need to. Maybe I should stream this full screen instead of because I stream like the specific window. And so then you can't see when I get achieves. It's fine. It's fine. We'll worry about that for another day. Oh, this changed. I think it's technically a missing object because it's just missing the life preserver. Hell yeah. Oh man, because it's on my face, you can probably hear all my nasty little. This is different, isn't it? Didn't it used to be like a. I thought it used to be like a doorway. What the fuck is this? Has this always been here? Jesus, this is bad. I'm really bad at this. It's been such a long time. I don't think we ever even did all of the levels from 7, which is a shame. I really liked 7. We'll have to come back and do them all. Some of the older ones are a little bit, like, choppy, and there is one that's, like, VR, so we won't do the VR one, but... What? Uh... Water anomaly... Yard. Why are we in an aquarium? What have we done? Hold on, let me scooch my little foot thing down. I have a little footrest, and it keeps my feet from getting so cold. And I am such a gentle, sweet baby now. What is this? There's not supposed to be. This is new. This is. Does it count as? There's water leaking. Why is there water? Is it a movement? Nope, I'm just nuts. You bet. Lantern room. There was always 3 here. Huh. This is, yeah, that's a whole lot of fog. Although, full disclosure, I did order the cutest fucking slippers for myself today. So, when those come in, I will be one happy bitch. I don't remember that one. I remember these 3, but I don't remember the one. Oh, okay. I keep expecting to see someone laying in this bed. How bad is it when I drink? Hold on. Oh, I'm so sorry. You can hear my mouth sounds. I'll mute before I drink next time. Although, can you just hear me like normal swallow? Not really. Okay. Bet. Those are just rocks. I thought it was like a pattern scratched into the ground. Hello? At least that one's easy to pin down. The wind is blowing. Oh, can I bring this? Can I bring you closer? Will it be weird if I bring you closer? Is it kind of weird? It's a little bit weird. Hold on. Oh. Yeah, that's better. More ergonomic. Oh, man. Sometimes I underestimate how much I can annoy myself in a short period of time. Okay, no dead bodies, no people in here. Um, I'm not seeing anything. I'm a sucker for that staircase. Seems like an absolute bitch to use, but it's cool. Give myself tech necks looking straight down. No, okay. This has always been a creepy lighthouse. There's nothing on the TV. Radio's still off. Still full of files. I don't know. I'm feeling nervous. I'm feeling like I'm about to lose. Is that flat now? Why is this flat? Does it count as... Ugh! So close. 3. Extra object in stairwell. Image and all... Oh, in interior. Frosted glass in keeper's cabin. Oh, I just thought that's how the glass was. Let's do it again. I believe in us. We'll do it this time. Backspace to skip. Okay. That's always flat. That's always there. That's pretty good. Oh, see, I thought it was just always like this. That weird pit is always there. That is a map. There is water on the floor. Cool. Bitchin'. There's always blood on the wall. Okay, let's get cracking. All right, we're locking in. We've got this. We're doing it this time. So help me. We're doing it this time. It would have been so good if I did it in one, though. Hello? Where's the pawn? The pawn that was there the whole time was an extra object? That's great. I'm absolute crap at this. That's incredible. Yeah, it's bottle. Sure. Cool. I didn't even question the pawn. I convinced myself that it was there from the beginning. Jeez, I really am my own worst enemy. Hello? Why are we back in the aquarium? It is very cool, though. I like seeing the whale. Gotta love a whale. Cool, 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 cool. Don't you dare put that pawn back. I thought it was weird, but I was also just like, of course there's a pawn. Maybe I played so much Blueprints. Not even recently, though. I played it a while back, and I haven't recovered. Everything seems like it needs a pawn now. That goes all the way up. It always has, no matter how much I wanted it to not go all the way up. Yeah. God, every time that gets me. It looks like a head and with the legs and the body. It just looks like a body. It just looks like a dude. A very flat dude, but a dude nonetheless. No bodies. No weird fog. No water. Only the normal water. Gosh, I didn't realize that I could get more anxious about this game, but here we are. More anxious than the gnar. No, gnar. Oof. Hello, that's new. Nice. Okay. We're on track. We haven't even hit one, and we've already found one. This is good. This is good news. Okay. Okay. I feel like it's gonna be something super. Oh, hello. Uh, object manipulation? So I mean, it's being played, like it's being cranked. Plus, it's the only new option, so that feels appropriate. If the game's telling me, hey, here's an option specifically for this, I should probably use that option. No bodies, that's still there. This doesn't count as movement, does it? It doesn't, right? Because it's always been moving. May as well give it a go, just in case. Oh shit, I'm sorry, I forgot to mute. You had to hear my disgusting swallowing. Gross mouth sounds. Nothing new. Nothing different. I know I've missed something. I just don't know what. There's no way it's one and there's not another anomaly somewhere. Because I've only fixed, what, one? Wish they had a counter for how many I've fixed so far. I kind of get why they wouldn't do that, just because then you can like keep track too closely and you might actually be able to figure out some kind of pattern, but I would like a counter for people like me who just cannot, for the life of them, keep count. Okay. Right. Yeah. Interior. Stairwell. Lantern room. Basement. Here. Yard. Interior. We're missing one. Oh, no, we're not. It comes after. I just got my order mixed up. I'm just, ooh, yay. I'm just overzealous. Ooh. Okay. I'm definitely missing some. At this point, there's got to be at least two active. Hello? That's strange broadcast? I mean, I know it's a radio, but with the like light color that they chose, it made me think of a heater more than a radio. My eyes always go to this first. It's so bright. Gotta love light direction. And that it's such a good color too. Just is this always on? Light anomaly yard? I don't remember that always being on. It's gotta be normal, but doesn't hurt in this mode to give it a report. It was a different mode. If we were on hard mode, like I should be, but I'm too much of a baby to go straight to hard mode. Also, I like playing on normal the first time I go through all the maps, although this is the second time, so it's a little cheaty. Wasn't this over here? No, it's always been there. Just because it gives you a chance to see the... Is that steamed up? Gives you a chance to see all the maps a bit better. No. Okay, so that's not... To be fair, I didn't get to see the frosted windows last time. They just told me after I finished the round that they were frosted. You're doing okay, right? Yes, we are. Okay, cool. Just making sure. Hello. That's weird. Is that an abyss? Abyssal hole? hole. Yeah. Usually the abyss is like those black, spreading, inky things, but you never know. They may have changed it between games. Evidently, no. Okay. Didn't this used to be... No. Oh. In the last time we played, it moved to the middle. So I'm remembering it being in the middle, which is wrong. But oh, man. I do love playing through it again and seeing all the things that you missed. It's painful, but... Oh, that's definitely a light anomaly. Is it aliens? It's totally aliens. That all looks the same. There's no creepy dudes. The TV's still off. That's still where it's supposed to be. None of those are nooses. This is still fine. At some point, that's gonna have like a person in it, huh? The jacket. Just a dude. Just a guy hung over the railing. Ugh. Hmm. Keeper's house. Interior. How long before they open the hatch to the basement? Um, well, that was, you know, normal. Okay, hold on. Hold on. Hold on. Mm, you are kind of alien-y, though. Okay. I have my ringtone on because I am expecting text messages, which it just rang. So I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't what I thought it was, but it's not. Um, so back we go. Back we go to the gamies. Gamey, gamey, gamey. Ugh. Is that? No, that's just a reflection. I thought that was somebody's face. Mm, keeper's cabin. Interior. Stairwell. Lantern room. Oh, hello. That's weird. Why you wiggling like that? Why is she shaking it? Any dead bodies while we're here? No, okay. Basement and back up to the pier. Okay. Doing great. Doing fantastic. We are absolutely rocking it. Nope, that's always been like that. As hard as it is for me to remember. Yep. Everything seems exactly how I left it. This is fantastic. It's just always been bent. Don't remember it being bent. No. It's always been bent. Okay, just me. Just me being me. That sounds about right. Oh, there wasn't a pillow there before. What? There was definitely no pillow there before. Sorry. Thankfully, I'm not a professional, so I can do this. Am I sure that was there? So was that a missing object on a different level? Ugh. Okay, we're back to the gnar. Intruder. Mm. Gives me the heebie-jeebies. Ooh, the heebie-jeebies. Ooh. Oh, hello. You're not supposed to be there. Intruder? Does it count as an intruder if we're not, if, I mean, I guess they're not supposed to be there, so. Because I kind of imagine that that's the stairwell that we see when we go inside. You know, this level. Oh, but there's no window here, so we may not have been able to get that from anywhere except outside. Huh, that makes sense. But again, it just makes me think of the older games where there were some where you could only like you could see the intruder from inside, but you could only get the point if you went outside and claimed it from there. It was weird, but sure. Stairwell, okay. Do do do. Oh my goodness. We're doing really well though. So I'm very optimistic. So optimistic, just the absolute most optimistic little person. Mm, no, that's fine. That's all the same. There's no bodies on the rocks. There's no bodies in the basement. There's no bodies on the pier. There's no bodies in the yard. There's no bodies in the cabin. No bodies inside. Okay, we're doing great. They haven't murdered anyone in like 2 hours. Just had to see that guy gnaw his nails down. Or their nails down, because let's be real, I don't know what or who that is. Mm-hmm. Focus. Oh my goodness. I'm losing my focus significantly. It's just always here. Was there always two ropes there? I'm gonna guess yes. Oh, wait. There's like a whole rail missing. There was definitely a rail here before, right? Oh, thank goodness. Oh, okay. Doing great. Man, it's like locking in actually works. I hate that phrase so much. But use it in inappropriate amount. Stairwell to the light, to the basement, to the pier, to the yard, to the keeper's cabin, to the interior, to the stairwell, to the light. Okay. There's this always here. We can always add the most mundane stuff. So at this point, like maybe, but also probably not because I'm just reaching because camera malfunction? Intruder? I see him now. Upward, 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 upward. I'll take a drink for that. And we got a warning. We have too many anomalies. But we only have 2 hours to go. So. Oh, I didn't like that. Hi, that's not supposed to be there. Glad you're back, friend. What? What? But the hole. Can I report the hole? Oh, okay. I nearly fixed it, but can I report the hello? Hello? Help? 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 Intruder! What is that? It's a mer shrimp crab thing. What is that? Oh no! Oh, I hated that so much. Okay. Keep going. It's okay. You got this, girly. Just don't think about it too much. Pier, yard, interior of the cabin, interior of the lighthouse, stairwell, the light thing, the basement. Why would it spawn all of those like in a row? That's new. I don't remember that being there. Okay. Uh, that's fine. That's whatever. Oh, I'm gonna be so mad if I have to. But we're just, you know what? We're not gonna even say that. We're just gonna keep going. We're just gonna keep doing it because I believe in me. I think I can do it. I think I am fully capable of doing this. There's nothing weird, right? Oh, hi. Basement. Cool, my basement's flooding. In the lighthouse, because that's where that weird trapdoor is. I'm getting real nervous. I'm getting real nervous. Oh no. What am I supposed to do about all of this? Pier, yard, cabin, interior. Those are fine. Stairwell, light, basement. We're good on the... Yeah, okay. Oh shit, there we go. I thought I could escape out of that, but no, you gotta click out of it. It's fair. I'm just being pissy. That's the kind of mood we're in today. To be fair, this game is making me pissy because it's giving me the weirdest stuff. Oh, but it's so good. It's so, so good. Oh, come on. Come on. You know you're missing something. Where is it? What are you missing? What are you missing? I've got to be missing something. There's no way that we're this close to, yeah, 5 a.m. and there's nothing. I call bull. Oh, come on. Come on, girl. Come on. Yeah. Yeah. Everything looks good. Looks good. It's gonna be really embarrassing if it does not indeed look good and I'm just missing everything. Here. Yard. Cabin. Interior. Again, I can't. This. Ugh. I feel like it's gonna have a person in it at some point, and I don't like that. Stairwell. Light. Basement. Ah! Technically, yeah, chat can help. As long as you're not, like, being super bad. But yeah, chat can help. I'm absolutely ass at this sometimes. I should have stayed longer to see like what I missed, but apparently I didn't care. Okay. We were so close. So close. So close. It's fine. It's fine. The faster I do it, the more I'll absorb. That's definitely how this works. Oh, shit. Replacement in the stairwell. That's wild. Shit, sorry. Forgot how fingers work. I'm absolutely determined to get this one. Although, gosh, I have mixed feelings because at least I got to see the weird mer shrimp person or mer crab person, lobster. Like I don't even know what that was. It looked like a lobster or like a crayfish. It's yeah. At least we got to see that. So it's a very cool little thing. Oh, that's where the extra buoy was. Hmm. Again, I love going back through and seeing everything I missed with my own two flippin' eyes. Okay, sorry. I heard a bark and I couldn't tell if it was in the game or my neighbor's dog. It's my neighbor's dog. It just caught me off guard. Okay. Okay. I'll slow it down like a normal human being. Oh, come on. I was so sure I would get it last time. I was so sure. Hello, why are there so many of you? What are we doing? What is happening? That's one of the original ones. What? Wait a minute. So it's not object manipulation because it's duplicating? So there were only 3 in there. Okay. Thanks, game. Love you. Oh, I did so much better last time, though. Oh, okay. I don't see any corpses. We're doing okay. No bodies go manipulation. I said it earlier, but it's like if the game gives me a specific control that I don't usually get when reporting things, I'm gonna use it, because chances are that's what I'm supposed to use. Sure, that seems okay. I never noticed that rock back there. Shoot. Okay. Not that it makes a difference. Nothing's happened, but admittedly, and this might be sticking my foot in my mouth. I haven't been as object movement because it moved it there. Nice. Okay. Weird. I haven't been as spooked by this one. Usually I get a few more jump scares out of them. So, for better or for worse, granted, I've seen a lot of creepy things, but they haven't necessarily jump scared me, which is fine. Totally nice. Just glad I'm getting to play. God, I thought that was a cat shadow. That would have been. That's. I feel like I remember there being color in there. Like maybe the fuses are missing? Probably not. I think I'm just misremembering. It's the joy of this game. Hello, that's quite a lot of fog. Gaslighting simulator. Yeah, I can see that. It's sitting there being like, I know this is different. I'm sure of it. Oh, I was very wrong. Or that's definitely been there the whole time. No, ma'am. You need to reevaluate your eyes and your brain. I think this is just like my more grown-up version of the like spot the difference puzzles that you used to get as a kid with like the two halves, which is exactly what it is, but I just mean this scratches the same itch in my brain without being overly simple, and that makes me very happy. No creepy intruder. That's still on the left. No dead bodies. Yeah. Every time one of these comes out, I have to get it as soon as possible. Although this one, I think this one and the last one were both gifts from friends. Which, hello, um, bless them, because I just like these games so much. They make me so happy. Cabin inside the lighthouse. Well, yeah, I'm just finally getting around to playing it, and ooh, gosh, so glad. So glad. Hello? I'm definitely missing something. It's 1:30. I feel like a version of this game where it only does one per hour or something at random. This was always here. This was definitely always here, but it was always next to the rope. But just something about it right now made. Oh, I bet you it was just the way the light hit it. It just made my brain stare well. Oh! Yeah, that's not safe, is it? That's not safe at all. Bottles and shit. Ocean. No, not OSHA. To be fair, most of this shit is not OSHA compliant. Like that pier, woof. This railing, those are definitely way too far apart. That wouldn't make it through uh, housing codes these days. No dead people, no creepy giants, no Nar, no Siren Lady. Ugh. I'm genuinely waiting for it to jump scare me. It's not going to. It's gonna be so nice. It's gonna be so sweet. It's gonna be so kind. I believe it. In my heart of hearts, I believe it. Blood still on the walls. Pier still absolutely. It's not. No, that's still the same distance. Never realized that before. Um, that thing's not there. No body in the bed, even though it gets me every damn time. Hello. Movement? Has it tied itself in a noose? No? Replacement then. That makes more sense. That makes a lot more sense. I'm a dumbass, Jesus. Okay. Yeah, yeah. We're doing okay. We're doing okay. Listen, you can argue just about anything. You're still wrong, but you can argue just about anything. Like, I'm okay with being wrong, especially about stuff like this. I'd rather be very wrong about silly things. Getting that anxious vibe. It's been too long. No, that's all fine. Okay. It's also the more, like, the longer I play this and the more I play it, the less I talk. Hello. That's weird. Um, when we started out, I was chatting shit the whole time about everything and nothing. Now I'm just like, nah, I'm gonna sit here and I'm gonna focus embarrassingly hard and still miss things. That's the kicker. No dead bodies. That's still weird. Aw, thanks. You're so sweet. It's been such a long time since I've streamed too. This is the first time I've streamed once in the last year. So it's very much like reprogramming my brain to just chat and chat and chat. Hello, that's creepy. Um, because yeah, no, I moved and I did a master's degree. So I just kind of slept when I wasn't doing those things. Those are fine. And moving to a new country is, it turns out really tiring and learning, like relearning everything, really, really exhausting. But it's okay. It was worth it. No, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. One of these days, that chair is going to change and it's going to ruin me. And I'm going to miss it. Okay. Yeah. Yes. We're looking good. Sure. How long before it absolutely wrecks me? That's still there. It's still the same distance. There's no giant. The buzzing is outside and not in the game. For how noise canceling these headphones are supposed to be, they don't cancel shit. They really don't. That's not right. That used to be a wooden box. Put that back in the basement. I don't want it. That's fine. Sure. No bodies or anything. Doing fine. I don't know why I've chosen this one. That's the replacement I missed. I should be taken out to the North 40. That's embarrassing as hell. I don't remember what this was. Was it an image anomaly? I have such a bad habit of when I do get these games of just of needing. Oh, that makes sense. I do panic of just needing to finish a level before being able to move on to the next one. And so I won't play the other levels until I've like done this one, till I've gotten through it, and it's really not conducive to playing through the whole game when you are easily distracted. So I think, yeah, I was saying earlier that when I had number 7, I haven't played through all of the levels because we were supposed to do it on stream, and then my life kind of exploded and I needed to do other things, and so I just never got back to it. So eventually I will sit down and play all of them in a row, just everything, to make sure that I play all of them, except for the VR one. I'm not gonna play the VR one. Please, for the love of everything, I'm not playing the VR one. Nope, that's fine. That was weird. Okay. It was just a camera glitch, not like a game thing. It's not good, and it's uncomfortable to play, in my opinion. Granted, to each their own and all that jazz, but it doesn't scratch the itch for me. There's something about the way that you flick through this. This is frosted glass. Um, there's something about the way that you flick through them that does it for me, and I don't like the kind of moving from room to room. We tried to play it once on stream when I first got my VR headset, and it's already difficult to stream in VR. I didn't want, it was so much harder to play. Hello? Nope, 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 shit, dicks. Crap. Are you in the wheelbarrow, girly? I don't want to, please, I don't want it. I don't want love. You're so pretty. Go back to the ocean. I beg of you. You're definitely a lobster. She's definitely a lobster. She's got the segmented arms and everything. Oh, so pretty. Go back to the ocean. I don't want to be serenaded. It, please don't serenade me. I like quiet. Especially, it seems like she's doing it at like a supersonic level. Please don't serenade me at a supersonic level. That seems uncomfortable to say the least. Um, oh, she's in the wheelbarrow. That'd be a funny way to screw up and just be like, object movement instead of intruder. We're doing fine. We're doing fine. What the frick are you? Blech. Please stop. Okay. I don't like it when they're gangly. Unpopular opinion, but please stop making them gangly. I miss. Oh no, that's creepy. I miss the ones where it was like the two dudes blowing each other in the bathroom. I miss that one. Please bring that one back. That was so good. It's so absurd. It's like, oh, am I interrupting? Oh, I am interrupting. I should. Yep. Bye-bye. He's so creepy. Although perched like a bird, yeah, perched like a bird would be. That is pretty good. It's definitely more creepy. The old ones with like the blowing each other on the couch and all that jazz. Those were creepy, but yeah, they skew towards the hello? Where the hell are we? We're in the stairwell. At least the Abyss ones are so clear. I thought that was a hand coming out of the ocean. It's definitely just a part of the pier. My brain needs to chill. Not the bongs of 4 a.m. That's still to the left. I know that's the same door, but my brain is telling me that it's not. Please. Gosh, that really was creepy. I don't want to see him again. I do think the Nar, not Nar, hmm. Man, my English sucks. And the one they throw into the basement and she looks like an alien, that one. That's too much. Those are my two least favorites so far. Doing okay. We're doing it. We're doing okay. We have all the cameras, right? Here, yard, keeper. Don't see anything weird. Interior, correct. Stairwell, light, and then basement. Yeah, we have all the cameras. That used to get me every time in the older games. The camera malfunctions, and I would just forget. And be like, oh, we only had 4 cameras. And you're like, girl, you've lost 2 cameras. Okay. Okay. That's still there. That's the same. That's the same. There's no one in the window. That's normal. That all looks fine. I feel very suspicious. Interior. Ah, shit. What did I miss? What did I miss? Oh man. Yeah, I'm not gonna get it. They've. Oh, that is fair. It is like hitting a box. No, it's this. Apparently it doesn't matter. Oh, yep, yep. It's not supposed to touch the boxes. I just accepted that. I was like, yeah, of course they put it on the box. That makes sense. That's how you put boxes under the ladder rungs. See, it's subtle, but at the same token, it's one of those things that I feel like that's fucking weird. Um, room manipulation. It's one of those ones that it's it's weird enough that your brain should just go, well, why is that there? It doesn't, like, yes, it's subtle, but my brain should twig. It should go, yeah, no, it's not supposed to be on top of the box. Although maybe it's just like my weird little brain being like, ah, yes, it fits so good. It fits so perfectly. You're happy about that. Ew. 2, 3, yeah, there's still 2 there, 4 there, yada yada. Cool. Those are still the same. There's nothing there. There's nothing in the distance. God, that gets me every time. It's just body shaped enough that when I switch to this room, I think it's a dead person. It's not thick enough, but it's just enough. Oh, that's not safe for work. I know it's a worm. I know it's a giant earthworm. In my heart, I know it's a giant earthworm. Yes, it is. It's totally futile, but you're gonna do it anyway. Intruder. No? Oh. Listen, in my heart, I know it's futile. If a giant worm comes inside, I'm getting absolutely mauled. Oh my god. Hi, body. I've seen some big ass worms, okay? I compost. I got some big boys in my garden. But if a worm that size is in my house, I'm gonna meet my maker. And I don't mean my mom. Um oh, yes. That felt weird for a second for some reason. It felt like it was the wrong order, but it's definitely correct. The basement? Oh, fuck. Okay. That, yeah. Mm. What am I missing? What am I missing? 2, 2, 3, 4. Those were always there. They've rotated? You're fucking with me. The labels are fucky. Oh, that's mean. That's actually mean. Actually, no, it's not, because the logo, the flammable symbol, that should have been a, hmm. Huh. That is mean, though. That's, nah, that's mean. I'm settling on it's mean. It's so mean. Why would you do that? Just leave the damn barrels alone. The holes? I'm not gonna remember the holes. Mm-mm. Nah. No, because nah. I could see how it helps for some people. Not my dumb self. They're all faced into. Oh, so when it's more satisfying, it's wrong. Got it. Great. Understood. Real life sucks. Oh, I keep thinking these are eyes, and they're not eyes, but I want them to be eyes. Shit! We only have to make it through 30 minutes. I just have to see what's in 30 minutes. Fuck. Shit. Ass. Dicks. Sorry. Ooh. Cam check. Oh, that's fair. Keeper's cabin, interior, stairwell, lantern room, basement, pier, yard. Fuck! Dicks. Shit, I forgot all about the yard. Are there any anomalies in the yard? Because that's what always gets me. It's like the cam's gone. There's an anomaly in it, but you can't see it. Weren't there 4 drawers? God only knows. Fucking absolutely. Hello? Hole. Hole! Hole! There was a typewriter in the interior? Oh, the files are gone. I thought my dumbass thought that was a one of those like tiered filing systems. Is it for real a typewriter? It's for real a typewriter. I can see it now. Whoops. No, I mean, actually, wait, this is good news. Yes, 2, 1, fucking hell yeah. Fuck yeah. Oh god. Okay, hold on just a second. I gotta. Oh, I unfortunately am gonna have to call it for tonight because I have plans that I need to get to, and I didn't mean to stream this late. I was supposed to start at 10 o'clock in the morning my time, but I didn't do that because, as as the title says, I had to make a cheesecake, and then I got cheese in my hair, and then I realized I was like, oh, I need to shower. And then I was like, oh, the next time I shower, I wanted to clean my shower because it needs it. So I cleaned my shower. Then my PC needed a BIOS update. Then so anyways, I started approximately let's see, I started an hour and a half ago. So that would have been like 2:30. Exactly. It is. It is. It wasn't all supposed to take that long. It was one of those days. Um but I have plans that I need to get to. So, oh, thank you for the follow. My plan is to stream every weekday from now on. We're gonna close this. You're all gonna have to look at my ugly ass face. Hi. I'm gonna be streaming every weekday. We're gonna go back to Fuck Fridays. Fuck Fridays are for the new and uninitiated. Phantom Hunters Underground Collective. It is my day of doing nothing but horror games and spooky things. And I'll probably go back to like Minecraft Mondays and shit like that. Because frankly, life is short. And things are complicated. Because I won't go into it because it's kind of sad. Not sad, but like it's a vibe killer. But yeah, thank you for the follow. I'm gonna be streaming. The plan is every weekday because I work weekends for the most. Yeah, life be lifing. I work weekends for the most part with like random weekdays thrown in. So yeah, as I'm available all weekdays, and I'll update that below. But well, that thought left the station. But that's pretty much it for today. Thank you so much for joining me. I had a great time. I'll be back again on Monday. Um, yeah, stay safe, stay healthy, be kind to yourself and everyone else whenever you can, and good night. Bye bye. It doesn't work anymore.